Good morning, everyone. I'm Samia Basser, your MC for Inspirational Saturday. Now, before we get started, I have a few general announcements to share with you. Please note the housekeeping rules for this session. We invite you to turn your cameras on and engage with us through the session with the virtual clap and chat. Remember, unless you are called upon as a program participant, please keep your volume muted on your microphone and/or devices. The session will be recorded and available after the conference. If you experience any technical issues during the presentation, please feel free to send a direct message to the tech team in the chat. We invite you to share your conference experience and comment on our Instagram and social media using the hashtags #AACUC 2021, #BoldMindfulBrave, #Commitment to Change, and #CTC 2021. We would like to thank our title sponsor, PSCU, and all of our sponsors and exhibitors. You can learn more about them in our sponsors and exhibitor site from the conference lobby. Their booths will be available through the end of December. Today's Inspirational Saturday comes from Lauren Williams. Lauren is a natural-born storyteller with a deep understanding of the media landscape, which has aided in the execution of various strategic communications campaigns. With nearly 10 years of experience in the communications field, her professional history spans across many industries, including financial services, entertainment, and religious organizations. Lauren is the Media Relations Strategy Manager for CUNA. Her ability to build and maintain relationships with reporters has given her success with client placements in CNBC, the New York Times, Politico, and more. Lauren received her Bachelor of Arts in Public Relations and Advertising from Penn State University and is a Master of Divinity candidate at the Wesley Theological Seminary. Presenting Justice Seeking, please help me welcome Lauren Williams.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Samia, for that amazing introduction. I am not worthy, I have to say. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen just so that we can be mindful of time. So first of all, just thank you to AACUC. Thank you to my Shiro, Renee Saddy-White, the president and CEO of AACUC. And I also want to give recognition to Chairman Sewell. Welcome, attendees. I'm just so excited and I'm so thankful that you would spend a little bit of your Saturday morning with me on Inspirational Saturday. I think it's just a great way to close out the conference, and I'm just so lucky to have you all here with me today. So let's talk about the goal of today. My goal for all of us together is really just to tap into what inspires each of us individually, and hoping that will ignite our collective desire to pursue justice. And you know what? Now, I have to admit that I made this slide before I knew I was going to have an amazing MC like Samia introducing me. But I would have to say, more than anything listed here, the only thing I really want you all to know is that I am just a woman driven by my faith in God and my love for his people. And so the thought exercise and the discussion that we're going to have today, like I said, together, we're going to do this together. It'll really just be a mashup of things that I have learned throughout all of these endeavors, throughout all the years that experience that even Samia just so eloquently shared with you all about me. You know, it's only fitting, right? It's Inspirational Saturday. It's only fitting that we spend a little bit of time talking about what inspires you. By definition, inspiration is simply the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. So we're going to talk today together about what mentally, spiritually, and emotionally stimulates you. What moves you to feel, to be the best version of yourself? You know, what gets those creative juices flowing? And I want us to think through this together. Just remember that we're going to do all of this together. Okay, so this is where it gets fun. I know that we've shared an email. If you have a journal, great. If not, I want to encourage you to just take a couple seconds, grab a pen and a paper. If you have your laptop and I have OneNote, I love OneNote, it's the best. If you have your iPad, go ahead and grab that, because these questions that you see here, we're going to do a little journaling exercise. It's only going to be 5 minutes, but it's just, excuse me, just a great way that I think we can think through what inspires us, right? Again, it's Inspirational Saturday. This is what today is all about. We're going to journey through these 6 questions. So while you get your pen and you get that stuff ready, we're going to try to think about, who inspires you, the people in your life. What inspires you? Is it a movie? Is it a quote? Maybe a book that you've read? Where inspires you? Is there a place that you go to get inspired? Do you like this photo right here? I know I would feel super inspired if I was on that boat. When inspires you? So when you're doing something, do you feel particularly inspired? I know I'm feeling inspired right now just by being able to speak here with you all. And then why is inspiration important to you? And thinking about that. Is it important to you? Is it not important to you? Why or why not? And then how do you inspire others? I think it's an important thing that we want to inspire others, even if we don't, that's not our first inclination. I think we do in a lot of different ways. So these are the 6 things that we are going to journey through. So we're going to pause for the next 5 minutes, and don't be afraid of the silence and the stillness. Just kind of lean into it. It might be a little awkward as we start. I'm going to run a timer because we at AACUC, we like punctual and on time. So if you have your journals, and even if you don't have it, if you're mobile, just think about it in your mind, right? So let's go ahead. I'm just going to set a timer and we'll be right back in 5 minutes. Got about 3 minutes left. And if you're just joining us, we're just taking a few minutes just to think about these questions. We're going to write them down, right? So that we can go back to them. We can read it later. We're always typing. We're always on our laptops. When do we sit and think about some of these things? So we've got about 2 minutes left. All right, friends, that was about 5 minutes. So we are going to go ahead and I would love to hear from you all. Like I said, I think it's good that we wrote it together. We took the time. Thank you for being vulnerable with me and just doing that, even just pausing for 5 moments in that stillness. Um, I can share and I can start by sharing, but I would love to hear from some folks in the chat. You know, you don't have to share everything, but maybe you just share who inspires you. Maybe you just share a space or a place where you get the most inspiration. I know for me, I love being in nature. When I talked about this photo, I feel like if I take a walk in the middle of the day, you know, that really kind of helps me. If I observe some of the, even just the little deers or the rabbits that I see, it just reminds me that I am but a small part, a small piece in this gigantic puzzle that is life, that is the world. And that just inspires me to do something bigger than myself, right? And I think it's just important to inspire because, you know, you never know who's watching and you want to inspire that next generation of credit union leaders, that next generation of whatever your profession might be or whatever your passions might be. You want to kind of ignite that, right? So I don't know if anyone is sharing in the chat, but I would love to hear from you all. What inspires you? My children. I love that. I thought that was I don't have children yet, but I feel like that's a big inspiration for a lot of parents out there. Witnessing, Pierre says, witnessing the kindness of others. I love that. I love seeing others be kind. That definitely challenges me to be kind. My family, gotta love the family. I think that's what really keeps us all grounded and inspired. Oh, Danya, I love that one. Inspired by overcomers. Yeah, there's nothing like a good story, like the rose grew out of the concrete. I think that's amazing. Ancestors. I love this. I'm a big history buff, so I am really big on those that come before us and how they inspire us. Opal, God, excellence, and freedom. I love that. Of course, Opal is going to have a poetic response. I love it. Mothers, strong women, family and friends, says Kelly. Yes. Nothing like mamas. Nothing like mamas. Okay, success. Okay, I like that. That push, that drive for success. At least you know that that's what keeps you going. Trailblazers and the underdog. Love the underdog. Oh, this is so amazing. God, family members, mentors. Yes, keep the sharing going. I love it. And maybe we get some ideas, right, about what's inspiring us by reading what is inspiring our fellow friends. Who inspires me? Renee Sadie White. I think Renee inspires us all. She is truly a shero. Okay, mothers. I see a lot of mothers. The future. I love it. I love it. This is so amazing, you all. I'm just so grateful that you were vulnerable. Please continue to share and to read. Don't let me stop it. Keep on sharing what inspires you and keep thinking about it throughout the day. For the sake of time, I'm just going to move to the next slide, but I want us to continue engaging. So please share in the chat, continue to talk to one another. Because like I said, we're doing this together. So sometime today, maybe later today or tomorrow, I really want to encourage you to kind of combine your list. If you were able to write that down, or even if you have it in your mind, combine it and maybe create what I like to call an inspiration statement. Because I think this can be something that you come back to, something that will remind you what really makes you tick. What moves you to change? We're talking about, as a collective, commitment to change. And I think we can be more inspired to change when we know what's inspiring us. I'm just going to share, this is my personal statement that I came up with. You know, I'm inspired by my family, my boyfriend, and my friends. You know, their unwavering love is really what keeps me going. The lives of those before me, which I know some of you all also shared, artwork, biblical stories, literature. Those are a major source of inspiration for me. You know, being in the presence of creation in all forms, nature, animals, lights up my spirit and inspires me. I feel most inspired when I'm making a difference in my community, because when we pour into our community, we can improve its human experience. Inspiration is important to me because that is what drives me to meet the needs of those I serve. And I inspire others by being a servant leader who is committed to doing the work of God's kingdom. So yes, I encourage you all to come up with something similar. Write it down. You could, put it somewhere where you see it every day. Let that be your why. Let that be your driving factor. And you're like, what does inspiration have to do with justice seeking, right? What does that even have to do with? But I think they are related. Inspiration is the spark. It's the starting point of something great. And I think it's really like a below the radar kind of tool that we can kind of tap into as we look to advance things like diversity, equity, inclusion within our movement. And it is also the spark that we need to make an impact in our personal circles and ultimately in our communities. When you're inspired, you are a better benefit to all of the people who inspire you, to the people who look up to you, to the people who need you. And our communities certainly need us. So this leads us into our conversation about justice seeking, right? The topic that you've all been emailed and it's on all the promotion materials. When I thought about justice seeking, it's something that I actually learned a little bit more about in seminary. And I think justice, when we hear that word, it just feels really big. But I think I want to just kind of strip this word down a little bit and remove our preconceived notions of its meaning. And as difficult as it might be, try just to remove some of the images of justice or the lack thereof that we've seen in the past 2 years. It's been a crazy 2 years. We've seen a lot of justice. We've seen a lot of injustice. But if we kind of wipe that from our mind and just think of justice in its most purest form, I really do like the way that Joyce Holiday, she's an author. I pulled this from her book, On Our Way. And I really like how she describes it in her definition. And she says, at the most basic level, doing justice means living in a way that takes into account the common good. It means caring about the needs of others and, in whatever ways that we can, acting to ensure that everyone has access to such benefits as food, shelter, education, freedom, and safety. So with this definition, right, this might not be the definition that we walked into this space with, but we see that justice and to seek justice is really to address a fundamental human need. There's a few words that jumped out at me when I read this definition. Justice is rooted in community, right? We see this talking about the common good. It's rooted in empathy, right? Caring for the needs of others. It's rooted in simplicity. That means in whatever ways that we can. You don't have to go on a protest to seek justice. You can do it in small ways in your everyday life. It's rooted in action. So it requires acting to ensure that everyone has access, right? That's equity. That's another thing that justice is rooted in. And again, like I said, justice is rooted in basic human needs: food, shelter, education, freedom, and safety. So one way that obviously humans gain access to these benefits that we talk about, right? Food, shelter, education, et cetera. How do we get those? Through finance and the larger economy. And you're like, where do credit unions fit? This is where we fit. This is where we thrive. And as a movement, this is where we draw our inspiration. I think our inspiration as credit union people is people helping people, right? And so that's our inspiration. And we could use our inspiration to seek economic justice. That's just one example of it. There's a definition here. I'm not going to read it in full. It's just something that I pulled from a website called Investopedia. But I think economic justice is really where credit unions find a really good safe space. And what I love about credit unions, and I'm sure I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I've worked here at CUNA, I can't believe almost 4 years now, but I'm completely engulfed and I completely believe and I completely love that we have this built-in ethical value proposition, which really lends itself to justice and economic justice, to be specific, right? We talk about ensuring the financial well-being of all credit union members. And this is really the primary way that we can create opportunities for those who need the most. And I think the reality is, though, right, without the very practical element of finance, the justice that we seek can be difficult for folks to obtain. Finance is really how people can have access to that food, to that shelter, to that freedom that we talk about when we talk about justice. And I picked this photo. I love this photo. My boyfriend helped me pick it out because the reality is so much can grow, right? Something can grow from a person or from a situation, when they have access to finance, when they have a good foundation of financial resources. That's why we talk about generational wealth. If you have that foundation, if your parents set it up for you, then you are more likely to have a dignified, productive, and creative life, just like is defined here. So this slide is I just want to lovingly remind you that seeking justice, even if it's small, even if it's big, no matter what ways you want to seek justice, it can really feel overwhelming and intimidating. That's if you're white, if you're Black, if you're blue, it really doesn't matter. It can feel like a lot of work. And so I think that it's healthy for us to enter this space with a mindset that we will fall, we will mess up. And there will always be a need that goes unmet. There will always be injustice that we feel really powerless to defeat. And we might start to ask ourselves, like, am I doing enough? Will it ever even be enough? And so I just want to encourage us not to let that thought to cripple us to do nothing. Instead, we should just kind of take each moment, look for an opportunity to do something, to be something for the common good of humankind. Again, always go back to that definition. It's just all about the common good. Justice is just really like this never-ending journey, because in my faith, we talk about being in a fallen world. And that's just a world that is troubled, a world that has lots of wrongdoings. So we're always going to be on this journey as far as I'm concerned. But I think that one small step is always worth taking. So another way to look at justice, from my perspective at least, is as service. I think that justice is service. It's service to our neighbor. And I picked this photo because it reminded me that when we help, right, just think about when you volunteer at your local food bank or whatever it is that you do in your volunteer time, when you're serving at church, or even if you're serving here as a member of ACUC, and you're doing so out of the kindness of your heart. We rise, right? We feel good about the work that we're doing, and we should. But I think a problem arises when our service creates like this false sense of humility. And then we ride that high that we might feel when we're doing good and helping others. And I think that is often like the misstep that we make. And I think this kind of takes the focus when we do this, it takes the focus off of others. It takes the focus off of the folks who need to be served and puts the spotlight on us. And this is really not what we want when we're seeking justice. And to seek justice is to serve. And to serve, you're serving one another. You're serving your fellow neighbor. And in this book, this book that I have, it's called Celebration of Discipline. It's by Richard J. Foster. And that's where I got this concept of self-righteous service versus true service. And he kind of differentiates the two. And so self-righteous service is basically, it's really concerned with these impressive gains on a scoreboard. They're keeping score with the amount of things that they did right and the amount of things that someone else did wrong, et cetera. Self-righteous service requires this external rewards and recognition. You want the pat on the back for what you're doing. Self-righteous service, it picks and chooses who to serve. So I'm going to serve this because that suits me. It has that sort of attitude. But true service, on the other hand, right? True service finds it nearly impossible to distinguish the small from the large service. Like I said, it's small service and large service. It really doesn't matter. It's all good stuff. True service is content in the hiddenness and does not seek attention. I find that those who don't need that public validation, they get it anyway, right? True service is indiscriminate of its ministry. Service is ministry, right? Whether we don't have to say it that way, but it is true. And that means, true service is a servant to all people, helping all people. We don't select the people that we want to help. We want to help all people. And so for me, I think humility is really the key here, right? That's really just what this is saying. And humility is really the key to authentic justice seeking and to service to others. So I did a little deep dive, or not a deep dive, but just scratch the surface a little bit on solidarity. I think it's a word that we hear, and I feel like I'm still understanding the definition of solidarity. But from what I gather, from what I make of it, it's really just a way to kind of immerse oneself within a particular community. And I think solidarity kind of takes justice seeking up a new level, takes it up a notch. John Deere, he's a Jesuit priest, and he spoke of his own experiences with marginalized communities in his book. It's called The Living Peace, and that's where I pulled this quote. Feel free to read that as well. And in this book, he mentions a photojournalist by the name of Maeve Puello. And he said that she was one of the best models he ever knew of dedicated solidarity. Now, for me, that says a lot coming from a priest who has pretty much dedicated his life to this sort of justice-seeking stuff. And it's not even a priest who, is a model of solidarity. It's a photojournalist. And that's because this photojournalist, if you know anything about that, and I don't know a ton about it, but I know that those people kind of take these sort of off-guard shots of kind of real life. They tell stories with a photo. So she immersed herself, this photojournalist, in the experience of suffering. And it was embedded in her daily work. And I'm happy to share her name in the chat at a later time, just so you can kind of look at some of her work. And most of us will never really have experiences like John or like Maeve, the photojournalist, and we'll never really be able to fully immerse ourselves in a marginalized community. But at the same time, right, the common bond that we share, we all immerse ourselves in the human life. And as being part of the human life and the human experience, we ought to recognize the need for basic human rights. That's just like the basic. If we can't get into the communities that hurt at the very base level, we are all humans participating in the same human experience. And I think in this way, and when we think about it that way, we can kind of reject that notion. And I think society even pushes this on us, right? This idea of us versus them. There is no us versus them. There is just us. There's one humankind. Because who is us and who is them, right? Because I think from my perspective, at any point in our lives, you can fall on either side of justice. I don't think that justice has, it has obviously had a detrimental effect on particular communities. But at any point in our lives, we can fall on a side of justice. At any point in our lives, we could be down on our luck. So it really does us a disservice to really kind of try to separate ourselves, as if one is better than the other, or as if we are divided. But I think if we just focus on that shared common experience as humans that we have, I think that we'll be a lot better off. So I think that we can serve others and seek justice the best when we can identify the hurt that people are feeling. I'm going to read briefly, this is a poem by British poet. Her name is Warsan Shire. I can also share this later as well. But if you just kind of tune your ears, it's a short poem. And it's called What They Did Yesterday Afternoon. They set my aunt's house on fire. I cried the way women on TV do, folding at the middle like a 5-pound note. I called the boy who used to love me. I tried to okay my voice. I said, hello. He said, Warsan, what's going on? What's happened? I've been praying, and these are what my prayers look like. Dear God, I come from 2 countries. One is thirsty, the other is on fire. Both need water. Later that night, I held an atlas in my lap. I ran my fingers across the whole world and whispered, where does it hurt? It answered, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Everywhere and everyone in this world hurts. Like I said before, from my religious perspective, I believe that we live in a broken world. But I think what we all can see, no matter what religion you are, is that this world that we live in is plagued by injustice. And I think we can bring this back to our own circles and our own communities by asking some real questions, right? Where does it hurt in the places where I live, work, and worship? Where does it hurt among my credit union membership? Where is the step that I can take to help address this hurt? So closing out, right? What steps can we take? I think there's countless steps. We can probably all come up with a step that we can take, maybe steps we've already taken. Like I said, it's a never ending journey. But I think if you haven't gathered, anything, or if you can walk away with anything from our presentation today, I really just want to focus on the small incremental movements toward justice and looking at justice as a way of life, not necessarily this grand act that requires hundreds of people, downtown marching. Justice can be in your everyday life. And so here are some of the steps that we can take. First, I think that we just really have to acknowledge that our world did not become unjust overnight. We got ourselves in this mess together. Like I said, as humankind, that's the shared experience. And because we got ourselves in this together, that is the same way that we have to be willing to dig ourselves out. The onus is not on any particular racial, ethnic, or gender group. Now, it might require a little extra elbow grease from a particular racial, ethnic, or gender group, but it's really all about the collective, and that's really what I want to focus on. And that's what I think that this journey starts. Second is to remember that justice is a way of life. It's a daily living that takes into account the common good. We can seek justice simply by caring more deeply about the needs of others, even if that means putting their needs above our own. Now that's we can have a whole presentation about that, and that's difficult. I'm still on that journey. I don't think I would have ever arrived at that journey. I think we're people who are focused on our own needs, our own desires, what we deem as appropriate, what we deem as important. But sometimes we have to be willing to put that to the side. The third one is a really kind of practical thing that I think that we can all do. And that is we can create a goal to read about an injustice happening in our own community, in our own backyard. We all live in different places. And like I said, there's injustice happening everywhere. So I would encourage you to perhaps start small. Maybe you can commit to reading one article or reading for 1 hour per month about something that's happening in your community. And I'll share something. I live in Maryland. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland. I love where I grew up and where I was raised. And I recently learned about an environmental justice issue that I would have never guessed was happening. And I learned that one of America's dirtiest power plants is actually releasing this stormwater in this very black, in a black and historic resort town that's in my county. It's right here in my county of Prince George's County. And this stain has really decreased the property value and made the land nearly unlivable for the Black people who this community was once thriving. Black people from across the country would travel here to have a break from their summers, those who could afford to do so. So that's just one example of something that I learned. And I think you all would be surprised what you might stumble on about what's happening in your own community. And then the last thing is that we must make a conscious choice to be kind, empathetic, and understanding. Believe it or not, these three things we have to work at. We have to choose to do daily, especially when it comes to those who don't look like us and who don't think like us. And so those are just a couple of things that I think that we can practically apply to our lives. Now, I'm going to share this video because I think that empathy is really the starting point to true service and justice seeking. It's also how we can be a better friend, a better colleague, a better family member. Again, I'm focusing on the most basic things that we can implement in our life starting today. And so this is from Brené Brown. You're probably familiar with her. She's an author, speaker, professor. And you all can tell me in the chat if you can't hear it. We'll try again, but we tested this with my awesome tech team, so we should be good.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, Not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I just love that. I love Brene Brown. I think she's just so great. And I think this is super practical for all of us. And you all, this is my last and final slide. Again, I think inspiration, just to tie it all together, should move us to feel, but then to go out and do. And I think that if we draw from what or who or where inspires us, we will discover new and creative ways to inspire and to serve others and to pursue justice. And remember, inspiration is just the spark. It's just the start. It's not sustaining, right? It's discipline, it's habit, it's consistency that really can move us to create change, to pursue this commitment to change that AACUC, that all of us are committed to for the betterment of ourselves and our community. And again, I think at the root of all of this work that we seek to do, DEI, commitment to change against racism, all of those things, it's about empathy. It's about understanding and choosing to understand where other people are coming from. And so I am way before my time, but I think that's better than being way over my time. But I'm so thankful to have been here with you all today. I'm so thankful that you all were so vulnerable to journal with me today. I would encourage you to make sure that if you have some time today or tomorrow, go back to that list, write that inspiration statement. And then when you write it down, don't forget to go back to it, because I am a person, I have tons of journals and I forget to go back, remember the things that have changed in my life when I prayed for it or when I was, making a change. So I would encourage you all to kind of go back and do that. So that's all I have for you. I'm going to, turn it back over to my amazing MC. Again, thank you all for being here with me today.
Thank you, Lauren. That was amazing. I'm definitely inspired. It was just a great way to start my morning. And I'm sure everyone that's tuned in had a great morning as well, starting off with this. So at this time, we will be opening up the floor for any questions that you might have. So please feel free to share in the chat and DM to Q&A. So let's see if we have our first question. What was the name of the book that touches on self-righteous service versus true service?
Yes, the name of that book, it is called, hold on, let me pull up my notes here. Let's see. It was, hold on. Oh, wait, self-righteousness. Sorry, guys, just bear with me 1 second. It was Richard Foster. It's called Celebration of Discipline. And let me see if I can quickly pull that up. It is a book that talks about spiritual discipline. So that was shared with you all at the beginning. I'm in seminary. And so we are learning about various things that we can do that are spiritual disciplines that you may not think are spiritual disciplines. And seeking justice is actually a spiritual discipline. It's a way that if you are a believer can show honor to God or show, but again, like I said, if you're not, it's just really showing honor to your fellow brethren, for the good of humanity. Sabbath rest, tomorrow, making sure you take time to rest, or even if it's not Sunday that you rest, maybe it's a Monday or it's a Tuesday. Sabbath rest is actually a spiritual discipline. So you'll learn, if you do get this book, you'll learn about all these different things and the ways that you can apply them. And you'd be surprised to know what other things that you do maybe every day that are really just spiritual disciplines. So I'm going to find that and share it in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I guess our next question is, what is your advice to anyone who is trying to get into journaling, affirmations, manifesting, things of that nature?
Yeah, I would say this is what's always been told to me, to start small. I think journaling it's easy, but it feels kind of weird. And you're like, what does that even mean? Or don't define it, and don't try to limit it to, oh, I can't do it for 5 minutes. You can do it for 5 minutes. I would encourage you to pick a book that you like. This seems small, it seems minor, but maybe it's a cute book if you like cutesy things, or something that's very practical. Maybe you are a OneNote kind of person. Use that. Pick a pen that you love. Pick a place that you love that's in your house. Going back to those spaces that inspire you. Maybe it's outside. Maybe you want to sit outside on your porch, and that's where you will draw inspiration to write. Your journals can be prayers. Your journals can be thoughts. I would say, though, I would caution, a journal is not necessarily a diary. It's not necessarily where you kind of talk about, all the things that are happening in your day. It's really a place to kind of just share your inner deep thoughts. It's really a place to kind of for me, I pray when I journal, or I just take notes. Like even today, I probably would have journaled some things that we've learned together. So, in terms of manifesting, that's really up to whatever your kind of spiritual discipline is, or what your spiritual beliefs are. For someone like me, I pray and then I act. Faith without works is dead, is what they say. So it's important to kind of move on the things that you journal about, the things that have been revealed to you. Even in the discussion today, a lot of you all share things that drive you. Now the next step is to move toward them. It's going to require some effort from you. It's not all up to God or the higher power or whatever it is you want to call it. The onus is on you. And that's why I try to bring justice to very scalable. Just think about how you interact with people. If you are a person of color, even how you interact with a fellow white person. I know we have to be more mindful of it, but we always put that on them. But how are we interacting with others? Are we trying to communicate our message for justice in a way that would be received by the other party? So that's a really long-winded way of saying, make it your own. And then once you write it down, do it. Go do it.
Lauren, I just want to say thank you. I remember meeting you on M Street and just having coffee. You had coffee and I had tea, and it was amazing. And you're just phenomenal. So thank you for what you've done for us this morning. Just truly inspiring, really, really inspiring. And Samia, great job emceeing.
Yes, Samia.
Thank you. And thank you, Lauren. This has been great. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. If there are any other questions, we will provide those to Lauren and be sure to distribute her responses to the attendees after the conference. So everyone, please, let's just give Lauren a big, big round of applause.
Thank you all. I love y'all. It's been such a blessing to be here with y'all today. I'm just glad y'all took some time to hang out with me and Samia on Saturday.
Yes, we really, really appreciate everyone who's joined us this morning. We really hope this session and the entire conference has inspired you in new ways. I know it has for me. Please don't be a stranger. Stay in touch with AACUC. Keep up with us on social media, of course. And we look forward to seeing you at future events. This has been great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ms. Renee. Thank you, AACUC, all board members, committee planning members, everyone. Thank you so much. Until next time, take care.
And you know, AACC folk ain't gonna leave. They're gonna wanna hang out. So
Yes, ma'am.
it's Saturday morning and I'm giving the official, we gotta go, y'all. Have a great one.